would not have imagined. If you look out the window on this setting, you see the water intakes for Hoover Dam. And clearly they were designed to be able to take in water all the way up to these levels. And you look at the bathtub rings around Lake Mead, and you know what the system was designed for and where it stands today. And then just across the street here is the spillway that hasn't seen a drop of Colorado River water since 1983. And so it is hard to imagine sometimes that, among other things, this system was built for flood control. And yet, here we are at the shores of Lake Mead at 25% of its capacity. That said, we're thankful for this winter's snow and rain, thank goodness. But everyone who lives and works in the basin knows that one good year will not save us from more than 2 decades of drought. We've had other good precipitation years during this 23-year drought, and yet the downward trajectory of the system has worsened. We cannot kick the can on finding solutions, and the women and men responsible for managing the system for the benefit of 40 million Americans and countless ecosystems, many of whom are with us today, are completely unified in our commitment to find those solutions. Recognizing the severity of this crisis and the reality that the system is changing in profound ways, the Biden administration has been working to bring every tool, every resource to bear as we seek to both minimize the impacts of the drought and develop long-term plans to facilitate water conservation and economic growth. The Interior Department is helping lead this all-of-government approach to the drought crisis by coordinating with our partners across the West to deploy resources that conserve water and increase the efficiency of water use in the Colorado River Basin. So what is our strategy? Our strategy includes 3 elements. First, President Biden and Congress have made historic investments through the Investing in America agenda, including $15.4 billion to enhance the West's water resilience to drought. Together, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act are the largest investments in climate resilience in our nation's history. This is a true all-of-government mobilization involving not only the Interior Department, but our federal partners at USDA, EPA, the Army Corps of Engineers, and others working with states, tribes, local government, and communities throughout the basin. I point you to the comprehensive fact sheet issued by the White House summarizing these investments, but they're summed up in the motto of one team, one fight. For example, last week we made several significant announcements, including over $500 million for infrastructure repairs on water delivery systems. We announced major projects in partnership with the Gila River Indian community for water conservation that alone will add 2 feet of elevation to Lake Mead. This is an example of Indian country leading the way for all Americans in the basin. We also announced $20 million for 4 surface water storage and groundwater storage projects in California and Utah. Every bit helps. These are examples of the investments that are vital to conserving water and making communities more resilient. The second element of our strategy is that we need new tools to protect elevations in these reservoirs and to keep the system operating at this time of unprecedented strain. Accordingly, last fall, the Interior Department and Bureau of Reclamation initiated an expedited process to revise the current interim operating guidelines for Glen Canyon and Hoover Dams, which the modeling shows may, in the near future, the existing guidelines may in the near future prove inadequate to protect the system and ensure power generation and water deliveries. We undertook this process to equip Reclamation with the alternatives and tools needed to address the likelihood of continued low runoff conditions and reduced water availability throughout the basin. And today, following months of intensive discussion and collaborative work with our basin state partners and water commissioners, 30 basin tribes, water managers, farmers and irrigators, municipalities, and other stakeholders, we are releasing a draft supplemental environmental impact statement for public comment. This draft SEIS reflects intensive coordination and collaboration between all 7 basin states and the federal government. From the beginning, we committed to pursuing a collaborative, consensus-based approach to ensure that any action from the department is done with as much engagement and consensus as possible. The draft alternatives in the supplemental EIS build on models and ideas we received from all 7 basin states. They also are intended to drive further collaboration and work among all parties towards the development of additional consensus-based solutions and agreements to achieve these goals. We are deliberately undertaking a public process that is transparent and inclusive, as is necessary and appropriate for a system supporting the entire American Southwest. As Commissioner Tootin will describe, the alternatives include actions based on the Secretary's authority to operate the system, to provide for human health and safety, address emergency conditions, and beneficial use. The alternatives also provide room for additional work and solutions, which leads to the third element of our strategy. We and all of the partners before you today and throughout the basin are committed to finding solutions and reaching agreements to conserve water and protect the system and communities. In addition to equipping reclamation with the tools it needs, this SEIS is intended to drive those conversations and negotiations forward. Some of the commentary has depicted an us versus them dynamic in the basin. I don't see that at all. I see commitment, collaboration, and problem solving. These are difficult issues, decades in the making. And so yes, some of the conversations can be difficult as well. The reason I'm hopeful that new agreements and solutions will continue to emerge, though, is that the spirit in the basin is one of community and collaboration. All 7 basin states and the communities they represent are unified in finding common solutions in the best interests of the 40 million people who depend on this precious resource, the Colorado River. Finally, I want to thank the scores of people at the Bureau of Reclamation and our cooperating agencies and partners who have dedicated countless hours to produce the draft that we're releasing today. Thank you. This work on a very aggressive timeline could not have been possible without these dedicated public servants. And leading this great team is someone who needs no introduction in the Colorado River Basin, which she has called home since she was a little girl. I am grateful to work alongside her, and now I turn over the microphone to our Commissioner, Camille Tootin.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary, and hello everyone for joining us today. It's a beautiful day in Nevada. It's good to be home. Last June, I briefed Congress on the science of the Colorado River Basin, the risks we saw to the system, and the action we needed to stabilize the system. Every day since, the team at the Bureau of Reclamation and I have worked tirelessly with our partners to develop the tools and strategies needed to improve and protect the stability and the sustainability of the Colorado River system now and into the future. As the Deputy Secretary mentioned, this work has been complemented by historic investments from President Biden's Investing in America agenda. The bipartisan infrastructure law includes $8.3 billion for the Bureau of Reclamation for infrastructure to advance drought resilience and expand access to clean water for families, farmers, and wildlife. The Inflation Reduction Act is investing another $4.6 billion to address western drought. These investments have been historic, but their lasting success relies on all of us coming together to chart a path for the future. The release of this draft SEIS provides the opportunity to implement fundamental changes for the future sustainability of this vital water resource. Since the draft supplemental process was initiated in October, we have met regularly with our basin states partners, the 30 basin tribes, water managers, farmers and irrigators, municipalities, and other stakeholders. We have pored over hydrologic assessments and data reports to ensure our actions are guided by the best and latest science. We've toured water infrastructure projects along the Colorado River and across the basin states to see firsthand the challenges and the opportunities that lie ahead of us. All of this work has been done to ensure that the draft supplemental impact statement that we are releasing charts the strongest possible path forward to protect the Colorado River system. The draft SEIS analyzes alternatives and measures to address potential shortages and to protect Glen Canyon and Hoover Dam operation system integrity and public health and safety in the event that such measures are required in 24 and continuing through 26 when the current operating guidelines expire. The alternatives presented in the draft SEIS, which I'll walk through momentarily, analyze measures that may be taken under the leadership of Secretary Deb Haaland's authorities to protect system operations in the face of unprecedented hydrologic conditions while providing allocations of water to communities in the lower basin that rely on the Colorado River system. The draft SEIS analyzes 3 alternatives, which reflect input from basin states, cooperating agencies, tribes, and other interested parties, included comments submitting to our public scoping period. The first is the no action alternative. This alternative describes the consequences of continued implementation using only existing agreements that control operations of Glen Canyon and Hoover dams, including further deteriorating hydrologic conditions and reservoir operations. The no action alternative, under this no action alternative, we will see the most impacts to the system. We can expect water levels to continue to decline, threatening the operations of the system and the water supply of 40 million people. There are 2 action alternatives. Both analyze reducing releases from Glen Canyon Dam. The total lower basin shortages for each alternative are the same at 2.083 million acre-feet domestically, which includes shortages under existing agreements. This is because the 2 million acre-feet is the maximum volume analyzed in the 2007 interim guidelines, final environmental impact statement. Action Alternative 1 looks at the additional lower Colorado River Basin shortages based on the concept of priority. Action Alternative 2 analyzes the additional reductions that are distributed in the same percentage across the lower basin water users in shortage condition. This alternative models a pro rata way to spread water shortages to maintain critical elevations in the 2 reservoirs. As the Deputy Secretary mentioned, not only do the draft alternatives incorporate models and concepts received from all of the basin states, but they are also intended to drive further collaboration work among all parties toward the development of an additional consensus-based solution to protect the system. This draft will provide us all with a sustainable path forward that builds on the commitment and unity of the basin states and tribes to support all of the communities that rely on this critical system. The draft supplemental environmental impact statement will be available for public comment for 45 days, and the final SEIS is anticipated to be available with a record of decision in summer 2023. This will inform the August 2023 decisions that will affect future operations in 2024. The work is hard, but it is part of our commitment to do everything we can as part of the Biden-Harris administration's all-of-government approach to invest in all of our communities. The Colorado River Basin includes a myriad of states, tribes, cities, towns, farms, and ecosystems. But fundamentally, it is one community comprised of 40 million people in landscapes that need us to get this right. To meet this moment, we must work together through our shared values and a commitment to protecting the river, leading with science and with creativity, and a shared understanding that unprecedented conditions require new solutions. I am grateful to be surrounded by so many professionals who care deeply and personally about making our communities more resilient to the impacts of climate change. And I want to thank my team at the Bureau of Reclamation for the outstanding work in producing this document in record time. I also want to acknowledge the representatives from the lower and upper basin states, as well as tribal leaders who are working tirelessly to find solutions. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Tom Bushatsky, the Director of Arizona's Department of Water Resources and the Governor's representative for the Colorado River. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Tootin. So I want to start by recognizing Deputy Secretary Boudreau and Reclamation Commissioner Tootin, and to thank the federal team for all the work they have done to protect the Colorado River system to date, and for completing this draft EIS so we can move forward with the additional actions we need to take to protect the river. I also want to recognize Esteban Lopez and Becky Mitchell, my colleagues from the Upper Basin, and Vice Chairman Long from the Cocopah Tribe, also representing the 10 Tribes Partnership. And last but certainly not least, my Lower Basin colleagues, J.B. Hamby and John Ensminger. Over the last 2 decades, many steps have been taken, including very difficult ones, and they have helped to stave off draconian outcomes for the river and the reservoirs we depend on. But looking out at Lake Mead behind me, it's a stark visual reminder of why we are here today. Some may believe that this winter's snow and rain has saved the river, but that is not the case. We have a lot of hard work and difficult decisions ahead of us in this basin to achieve our goal, a resilient Colorado River system. The draft SEIS that's been discussed here today presents multiple paths forward, but those paths have dire consequences in some cases and may spur opposition or even litigation, unacceptable outcomes. Instead, let us accelerate our discussions in the basin for a collaborative, consensus-based outcome. We have tools, we've heard of many of them already, at our disposal, developed over the last decade and a half or so, and we now have additional resources from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act to enhance the effectiveness of those tools. We need to use every tool we have in the toolbox. But let's not forget the most powerful tool in the toolbox, and that is the commitment of me and my colleagues, our tribal partners, and others in the basin to create a resilient Colorado River system for all of our constituents, our economies, our quality of life, and for the environment. In the coming days, we will work tirelessly to achieve that outcome. That concludes my remarks, and then I have the pleasure of introducing the next speaker, Esteban Lopez. Esteban is New Mexico's governor's representative on Colorado River matters in general, and New Mexico's commissioner for the Upper Colorado River Commission.
Thank you, Tom. And I also want to begin first by acknowledging Deputy Secretary Boudreau and Commissioner Tootin and all of the federal team that has done just an amazing job of pushing forward this draft SEIS in a record time. It's not only them, but it's all of our state colleagues, many of them represented here today. I want to acknowledge our lower basin colleagues, Director Bushatsky, Mr. Hamby, Mr. Ensminger, and then I'm joined by an upper basin colleague, Rebecca Mitchell from Colorado, but we're not joined by Gene Shawcroft from Utah or Brandon Gephardt from Wyoming. That should not be taken as a disinterest on their part. There's just an awful lot going on. I know at least one of them had another separate compact meeting to attend to today. So what I'd like to mention is that the release of this draft SEIS is an incredibly important step provided by Reclamation for further discussion amongst the states and Reclamation and the tribes to really try and build a robust consensus. Again, I think Reclamation is to be commended for the work that they've done so far, but there's an awful lot to get done to get to the end point that we need to be at. As you all know, a few months ago, the 6 states submitted a consensus, a 6-state consensus alternative for review. Unfortunately, we were given the tight time frame. We were unable to reach a 7-state consensus. But California similarly submitted their own alternative. What I was heartened by then was the fact that both recommendations really acknowledged kind of the extent of the shortages that we will have to face. And it also acknowledged, both alternatives acknowledged that whether we like it or not, the heavy lifting has to happen within the lower basin. The upper basin is already taken and continues to take significant hydrologic shortages. I'm heartened, having heard only a very, very brief description of the draft SEIS yesterday, that draft SEIS also recognizes those key points, the necessity of hard actions, and that we all have to work together on it. Obviously, we haven't seen the details, but I think it gives us a lot to work with, such that we can, I believe, build towards a full 7 states consensus. I also want to recognize, as others have, that this year we've been given a rare gift. The hydrology this year has been nothing short of amazing, and I think it's now up to us to assure that we don't squander it. We have an opportunity here to rebuild supplies that were kind of loaned to the system, if you will, under the emergency drought actions that were taken over the course of the last year. We have an opportunity to begin to recover in a small way, but significant, water levels in both Lakes Powell and Meade. I urge us not to squander this opportunity. Over the course of the last 5 years, and you can certainly go back further if you'd like, the Colorado River Basin has been almost in a constant state of emergency, requiring a whole series of almost emergency actions to keep from getting to a really bad place. I think that highlights the reality that we're facing, the new reality that we're facing, that we have to do something different, and Reclamation's issuance of this SEIS, I think, is a similar recognition of that, and we are committed. Commissioner, myself, and our Basin States colleagues are committed to getting this right. We absolutely have to get this right. There's 40 million people that are relying on us. We also need to move beyond just the continual emergency actions and get into a mode where we are doing some real planning for the long term. I think this SEIS sets the stage for that. And we are working hard throughout the entire basin. In the upper basin, we are taking, as everyone is, we are working closely with all of the Colorado River stakeholders. Most notably, we are meeting weekly with the upper basin tribes and keeping them apprised of the management matters. They are committed as well to helping us get this right. And with that, I want to move to introduce Chairwoman Long. She's the chair of the 10 Tribes Partnership, Colorado River 10 Tribes Partnership, and the vice chair of the Kokopah Tribe. Thank you very much.
Do I need to stand on this? Yeah, I don't care. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. My name is Rosa Long. I am the vice chair of the Kokopah Indian Tribe, as you heard, and I'm also the chair of the 10 Tribes Partnership, which I obtained that leadership role in December at CRUA in Las Vegas. So I'm back, and first of all, before I start, when I wanted to acknowledge the ancestral lands of the Fort Mojave Indian Tribe, of which we are on. Chairman Timothy Williams and his Vice Chairman Shan Lewis and his entire council have been extremely involved in water and always looking out for resources and opportunities to utilize their water efficiently and very, how can I say, they just want to take care of the river. So they're very much in this with us together, but I do want to start off by acknowledging them. The Colorado River is a vital source of water for millions of people in both the upper and lower basins, and its preservation is crucial to the survival of both the human and natural communities that depend on it. The collaboration between tribal and federal governments is essential in ensuring the long-term health and its sustainability, an invaluable resource, and its success. We have heard from experts in a wide range of fields about the challenges facing the Colorado River and the innovative solutions that are being developed to address them. But we also recognize that this work is far from over. As you already heard, it is very difficult for the commissioner to come up here and to brief you on such an important document that is going to affect everyone. And so, I stand here to support her on that. That was just released, and so we have to be supportive and we all have to work together on this. So as I said, we've heard from all the experts and all the challenges that we face. You can see it, as they've mentioned, with the rings behind us, that you can visibly see the lower levels of the Colorado River. And it's a very scary situation when it is feeding 40 million people. And so in saying that, we want to recognize the hard work of everyone involved, those tribal leaders that came before me, that began this partnership, all those other ad hoc and committees that came before us, our elders that from each of the tribes that take care of their river. This is where we, our creation story came from, if you want to know how important this river is to us. So we want to take care of it. We want to work with the government and build that partnership together. And so we must remember that this continued support for each other is necessary for future generations. We must remember that our actions today will have a profound impact on the world our children and grandchildren will inherit. We owe it to them to work together to find solutions that balance the needs of the people and the environment. I want to express my deepest gratitude to all the leaders from all the tribes and federal agencies and the non-governmental organizations, our partners in Mexico, agricultural producers who have contributed to the efforts of preservation of the river, and the migrant workers who care for the crops that feed our families. Your dedication and your hard job are an inspiration to us all. I too was a field worker at one time, so I know that they're all going to be impacted if we don't work together. In closing, let us commit to continuing our collaboration and to work together in the spirit of mutual respect and understanding. By doing so, we can ensure that the Colorado River remains a vital and thriving resource for generations to come. Committing to a dialogue in which we are all a part of is an important first step, and we look forward to working with Reclamation and Interior and all the stakeholders in the basin. Thank you all for your participation and contributions to this very important conversation, and it will continue. Tomorrow we have a meeting, 10 Tribes Partnership in Phoenix, that we will be traveling to, and to speak to all those tribes that are going to work together collectively and find solutions, as I just mentioned. This was a very short turnaround. That's why I'm the only one that's here. For me, I like to work together in the groups, and I wish all my tribes were here next to me, but they are here in spirit. They're on the phone. I know that they're there and they're supporting this effort, and I will see them soon. I will see them tomorrow. I am very much I like to work in a group, and it's going to take all of us, and it is a very scary situation, and I call on the state of Arizona and all those states that are affected with the Colorado River and its drought, that they think about the conservation of water and what they can do in their households to ensure that we save every drop, because without the river, we won't be able to be here. So I would thank you all for your kind attention, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you. This is my first time actually coming out to the Hoover Dam. I've never made it, always at the CRUA, but thank you so much for your invite, and I look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Yeah, so under the Secretary's authority, but also her responsibility, is to ensure that the Colorado River system provides the multitude of services that add up to human health and safety. And so that includes fundamental services such as the delivery of drinking water. It includes services such as the delivery of water for agriculture. It includes maintaining the ability of these dams to generate electricity. And so her responsibility and her authority are broad to operate these dams in the interests of the public, human health and safety in all of those dimensions.
The other is, I think we might have answered Commissioner Newton also. Did we take into account for this supplemental EIS these winters, rains, and snow?
Did we take into account this year's hydrology? So what we looked at for this SEIS is the last 30 years of hydrology, including the last 23 driest years on record. What we're doing as far as hydrology that we see this year, snowpack is at 157% of average, is how we operate the system in water year 2023. Certainly, we want to take advantage of this good resource this year. It hasn't melted yet, so let's not count it until it ends in the reservoirs. But to be able to build in 23, which will help inform water year 2024. Action alternative 2, which is, there's 3, the no action alternative, and then 2 action alternatives. Action alternative 1 and 2 look at lower basin shortages at roughly 2 million acre feet. That builds upon existing shortage agreements that we have in place. And the difference with action alternative 2 is that delta that we need, depending on the reservoir levels, is spread across the basin on a pro rata basis based on their consumptive use in water year 2021.
So I'm trying to figure out what that means for Nevada. Does splitting the two, are we splitting the 2 million acre feet amongst the 3 lower basin states? Does that mean 2 million divided by 3?
No, it's split amongst all water users in the lower basin.
And so action, do we have any numbers for what the first action alternative means? That's the one that's according to water rights. How would that benefit all of us? What does that mean for that?
So we're making the SEIS document public today. Those numbers are in there, and we're happy to follow up with specifics for each state.
Thank you.
Sure.
So the alternative action law will follow a certain priority system. At the lower levels, that could really cripple the city's water supply. Is that a reasonable or feasible solution going forward?
What we're looking at in all of these alternatives is what the system is. The alternative 1 looks at priority. And as we look at no action, which is the worst alternative as far as impacts to cities and communities, we're looking at feedback from option 1, alternative 1, as well as alternative 2.
My question is about the action alternative that includes the pro rata reductions. I'm wondering if that applies equally to tribes and how that squares with the reserve rights.
Action alternative 2 looks at